Oh, what is it?
Ginger.
Oh, delightful. What a delight.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Small Talk. I'm Amy and this is my wife Maggie.
Hello.
And together we are ThinkerThemer. And did you almost spill your tea?
I almost feel, well, no, it's just the tag got caught in my finger. And
I almost had a disaster at the start of the episode. This is Small Talk.
Makes for great blooper. Great bloopers. Oh, no.
My goodness. Do you want to start again?
No.
So this is the series where clearly we don't edit well, and we talk about some small box games as well as some IAQs. Sometimes we talk through some postcards, but today we don't have any mailbox items to speak of, and so today we just got a lot of chit chat. We'll get through some infrequently asked questions, but first we usually do a bit of an update of what we've been up to, and just yesterday we went to the Board Game Barbecue Game Day.
Yes.
Now, if you haven't heard of the Board Game Barbecue, they have a fabulous podcast, so go and check them out. It's actually a group of people who live all over Australia.
Yes, yeah,
a
all
group
over
of
the
gamers,
place,
yeah, and they come together and kind of, there's quite a few of them, so sometimes they do different episodes each, but what has been really wonderful is they've created a community around their game days, which take place in each of the capital cities in Australia, which is really amazing. And we've been to a few. We've been to a few of them now, and we always have such a great time. They're just really casual. We usually take some games to play, and sometimes, we sit down and just learn a game.
Yes, meet people as well. I'm most excited about being taught games. I'm like, I don't have to learn it. I get to just sit there and be taught to me.
It's so good, isn't it?
So
being
good.
Taught a game.
You can just then play and then...
I always think, imagine how many games we could get through if we had people to teach us the games.
We really need
huge
to
barrier.
Strengthen our play group. Level up our play group.
Yeah, we're not going to say we need better friends, but we thought
we need better gaming friends.
We need better gaming friends.
We have very good quality friends, but we need better gaming friends. So.
Yeah, ones that learn as many games as us. I don't know if we're going to find anyone that learns as many games as us.
But again, we go to days like yesterday, and it's like, obviously, they're out there.
Amazing.
There's amazing people out there who know a lot of games, way more games than we do. So it's like, great, teach us.
So actually, we took a lot of games with us this time around because we've just got such a backlog of games, and we happen to have a couple of early release games, and so that always gets people excited. It's nice to be able to share those with people. We also met a few different people. So one person, Alex, who we got to play a game with, actually came along to Board Game Barbecue because we'd mentioned it on the channel. So hi, Alex. It was lovely to meet you and play a game with you. And then we also met Alex and Tom, a different Alex.
Yes, lots of Alexes.
Who had commented before that they didn't get a chance to meet us at the last one. So we didn't get a chance to play a game together, but it was nice to meet you both. We just had a wonderful day playing with everyone. So
delightful.
Such a delight. So delightful.
And it goes by so quickly. It's like you always have these grand plans of how many games you're going to play, and then before you know, it's like, what? We've been here 4 hours. What? We've been here 8 hours. What? It's like, oh no.
It really does. We were saying that you can probably get 4 good games into one day.
Bigger ones.
If you play the really big games, like if you're sitting down to an Arc Nova for a first teach, you're looking at half your day gone, just like that.
I mean, it's a great way of spending your half a day.
It was raining and it's wintry.
Yes, it was the perfect
I got my
indoor.
Ugg boots on because it's. Oh, there's still a sticker on my Ugg boots.
Oh my goodness. It was the
what
perfect
is happening in this
indoor...
episode? This is a mess.
And I feel like we got our hair cut and it was far too short, so I'm so self-conscious. I feel like my Achilles heel.
I didn't know you were going to mention that. And I was trying to have a sip of tea.
It's the elephant in the room, and I feel like, is it Samson that when they cut his hair, he lost? So I don't even know who I am, where I am.
Okay, so
my hair is gone.
I guess we're talking about this now, but I have been cutting my own hair. For a very long time.
Help from me.
Not really. I've been mostly cutting my own hair.
Bits in the back that you can't quite reach.
But I didn't buy, so this is during lockdown, of course. We had a very long lockdown here in Melbourne, so you just had to resort to cutting your own hair if you wanted your haircut. And so I have an undercut actually. So I've shaved in the back of my head, which most people wouldn't know because I always have my hair down.
Undercover.
Yeah, but I have so much hair that it's the only way that I can cope with it, get rid of half of it. But I was using thinning scissors, and thinning scissors are a dangerous tool, my friends, because when I first started, I watched a YouTube tutorial and I was like, okay, I've got this. And when I finished, it looked great. And I was like, yeah, I'm never going to the hairdresser again.
And you got drunk with power.
Then you get really overconfident with the thinning scissors, and it's just like, I'm just going to take wild chunks of my hair and hack at them. Then I didn't have any to deal with the length, so I just started using actually, the hairdresser said to me, did you use the thinning scissors to cut the length off? And I was like, yes. Well, and he's like, oh, yeah, looks interesting. I was like,
yeah. If all you have is the one tool, that's the one tool you're going to use for everything. So
anyway, I discovered that it's much easier to make hair look good on a Zoom call than it is in real life.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, you just have to
now
deal with
we're back to like having in-person meetings and for work and stuff, and it's like, oh, I can't get away with, just the
back being
the what is that Zoom setting of like beautify or whatever.
Yeah, the filter.
Yeah, it's like, no, there's no such thing.
Smooth out all the...
Anyways, but it was that whole thing of...
But so we both went into at the same time, which we shouldn't do because we both come out with almost identical haircuts, which is just...
Disaster.
And I said,
it's hilarious.
I said, don't take any length off. And look what happened. Like, it's pretty short. And yours is shorter.
I said, take some, like, because it was quite long. So I just take a little bit. But it's that whole thing you don't realize, like, when the hair is wet.
Yours is really long, though. Like, you hadn't had a proper haircut in a long time.
And so when it's wet, they kind of, I'm like, yeah, that looks good. Maybe a little bit more. And then when it dries, it's like, uh-oh, what have I done?
Anyway, enough about our haircuts.
That was a big derailment.
It was.
My apologies.
But we both have shorter hair now, and we just have to wait till it grows out.
And that's my excuse for being all over the place, because I don't even know, like, now that the hair's gone.
Yeah. Anyway, we should talk about what else have we been up to. Okay, so because we had such a big day at the board game barbecue, very long, wonderful day, but always really tiring when you're teaching games and you're trying to process a lot of information. We played some quite crunchy games, so it was quite mentally taxing. Yeah. Then of course it was in the city, so we had to drive all the way home. We live about an hour and a half out of the city, so it's a long day. And then I had arranged a Eurovision watch party with the
ambitious
Joey fam, with our channel members on the Discord. We had a watch party organised, which meant that I had to get up at 5 a.m. Alas, I did not. I slept through my alarm. I woke up in a panic at 6:15. I just woke up and I was like, Eurovision. I leapt out of bed and ran to the TV and got myself settled with coffee and TV.
Even Boston woke up and said, what is happening? I could hear him going down the stairs with you. Trot, 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 trot.
Luckily, if you watch Eurovision, it's a very long finale and the voting alone is half the show and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always so nice to watch that in company because it's so outrageously different and I love that about it. And people
unique.
Kind of mock it in some ways, but it is really a fantastic place for diversity to thrive.
Really celebrate.
Like, the world needs
uniqueness and things that are quirky and
where else can you be celebrated for the quirkiness that is what turns up on that stage? Honestly,
it's so great. It's just truly amazing.
It is so good. Yeah, and there were great songs. I won't spoil anything. I will summarize it by saying ballads and bananas was probably a good way to summarize.
Yeah,
and it was a good time. So I love Eurovision, watched all the semi-finals, and I try and get up every year at 5 a.m. I failed this year, but
you got there.
But I got enough of it, I think. Yeah.
Nice.
So hope everyone enjoyed Eurovision if you were watching. And what else? Okay, so another thing we've been working on, we're almost there with our studio. It needs a bit of lighting, and then we'll be able to show off our new shelves.
Yes.
And I'm really excited about that.
A new shelving setup.
I wouldn't say it's particularly organised, but they're on shelves, which is a big improvement of the cupboard situation.
Off the floors and cupboards and onto a shelf, which is good.
And we've almost got our big sale of culling games together. Yep. So hopefully we'll be able to make a video about that. And what else? We are trying to work on our review format. because we love doing game reviews. Obviously, that's how we started the channel.
Yes.
But our game reviews are quite long. So, for example, this week we dropped Dwellings of Eldervale. That video is 31 minutes long.
Yes.
That's a big commitment if you want to find out what we think about a game.
Yeah.
It is. It's a lot, but it's also a lot of editing. It's a lot of preparation. It's not the best format for pumping out content.
And it's like, and we play so many games that then just sort of sit there in the corner and they're like, because it just always, it's such a production to actually, quite literally a production to get any one of those reviews out. So we really need to find a better way.
Yeah, so, well, we are trying to find a better way. We're going to try and get more reviews done. The way that we're going to do that, another thing that takes so much time. So we both have full-time jobs.
Yes.
And outside of that is basically we spend most of our weekend making content, whether that's recording or editing. It takes a lot of time. When we have events on the weekends, we generally have to bring that forward to like try and pre-record things or do it early in the morning or late at night. So there's a lot of like juggling that goes on. One thing that has become a little time consuming is, well, the weekly videos are time consuming. So Backchat, we spend probably 6 or 7 hours of preparation prior to recording. Then there's the recording and the editing, which at the other end is probably another good 4 or 5 hours. So it's a really long process. We love doing it because we feel like hopefully everybody gets value out of it.
Well, hopefully it means that it saves you all those
hours researching.
Yeah.
So we go through all the 35 campaigns and we just try and talk about the best, and we try and learn them to the best of our ability from what they have available, and so we can give you an informed opinion.
You'd be surprised how hard sometimes it is to just figure out the basics of what is this game? How do you play it?
Yeah.
It's like
what is happening?
Yeah, what happens in the So anyways. But it's
and then
it is good to, like, obviously you do then feel like you've got a good sense of everything that's out there. So it's can be quite good from that point.
Yes, and then also, so small talk, we love small talk because it feels like just hanging out with friends.
Yeah.
We can sit down and have a chat, and as you
spill
see
tea all over yourself.
Whatever,
show your haircut.
Show off the sticker off the bottom of my shoe. Quality content. But we always make sure we have 5 games that we review, and of course, to ensure that we can talk about them really well, even if it's a game that we've had for a long time, we always make sure that we play it, and we play it a lot, and we play it with different play accounts so that we can kind of talk about it on the show. But that puts a bit of time pressure on us as well, because then there's 5 games that we're trying to fit in and around our full-time jobs on top of the games that we're trying to get reviewed in individual reviews. Yeah. So what we're going to do, long story short, not really, is that we're going to be talking through 3 games from now on, but in more detail. And we feel like we can get to know the games a bit more. Yeah. And obviously we will talk about them in as much detail as we usually do. But the other thing is that's going to free up our time to do other reviews. We hopefully
more of the bigger
game reviews. Yeah. But also, it's very hard we've had some feedback that it's, of course, really hard to search for our review of a particular game. Yeah. And
when it's covered within
small talk. Yeah. And there are probably, 100 games that we've covered in small talk now, and you can't find any of those. And so what we really need to do is
150-ish.
So many games. That's a lot of small box games. That's a lot.
Because it's like 30 episodes. Is that my math correct? It's like 30-something episodes now.
Times 5.
Times 5?
Yeah.
150
That's 150
plus
games. But you can't find those reviews. And so we're going to try something. You will see that we are going to try and snippet these videos so that the 3 small box game reviews are searchable on our channel. And with 3, it's going to cause a little bit less clutter than it would if it was small talk plus 5 videos.
I'm going to try and see if we can put them in so that it's not cluttering the feed.
We'll try.
So it's just going to have its own little space and not be part of, maybe I think there's a way so that it's not hitting the notification, so it's not kind of notifying you twice, because if you're already watching small talk,
that could be annoying.
Then, and I think there's a way of doing it.
So please let us know if you have any ideas about that. But the main thing is that we can't put them on BGG either unless they're individual review videos, and so that's going to make it a bit easier for us to communicate with people about particular games. So that's something that we're doing. But now let's talk through some IAQs.
It's question time.
So it's question time, and there's always questions questions coming in, so thank you so much. One question I had yesterday that I haven't written down, that it just popped into my head, was, are we no longer replying to comments?
Yeah.
The answer to that is, well, we have stopped replying to comments, but this is a short-term issue that we're having.
Yes. It's a time and capacity issue at the moment.
It's definitely a time and capacity issue. We always read all of the comments. So rest assured, we are seeing everything. We just haven't had the time to sit down and reply to all the comments. That is something that I used to take great pride in, was like making sure every person who commented got a reply. And we definitely want to get back to that. The other thing is, as you know from some videos that we've had recently, we had a bit of trolling. And so that made it really emotionally difficult to be in that back end of YouTube and dealing with all the comments. So we've taken a little bit of a break for a couple of reasons. Yeah. But we're coming back. We're coming back. And thank you everyone who always takes the time to comment on our videos. It means so much to us.
Yeah, even if we're not replying, we do read them, and it does mean a lot to us whenever we read those things.
And it's such a wonderful community. We see the same names come up all the time, and we remember you, and we will delight in the day that we can meet at a con somewhere around the world. So thank you so much for always chatting to us. But now, some IAQs. Okay. So Kirsten asks, this is funny. This is because we're talking about our wedding and how we met and everything. Yeah. When did you realize that the relationship you weren't looking for at a friendly coffee had found you after all?
Yes, Amy. When did you realize? Because I sort of realized when we first met, and I assumed that it had been mutual, but then I was to learn later on via text that it's like, actually, I'm only looking for a friendship. And I was like, okay. And that's when it swapped to friendly coffee. And then at some point...
Can I just explain myself? Because...
Please do.
It wasn't anything to do with Maggie. I had literally just come out of a very bad breakup. And so I was in, we were out, the night I met Maggie, my friends and my sister were trying to make me forget about said awful breakup. So I wasn't in a good place at the time. And so I thought, but it's a great time to make friends. So then we had coffee, and as everyone knows, Maggie is very captivating.
Stop it.
And over that first coffee...
It was a little, because you had made it very clear that there was to be, nothing beyond just friends, maybe one. I was very relaxed.
Pressure was off,
Pressure was off, so I was just...
You were talking, that's for sure.
Was chatting away.
Talk.
No need to impress, and apparently that did the trick.
I found you very worldly.
Well, I faked it well.
I was learning Spanish, and then I found out that you spoke Spanish. You were DJing at the time. Little did I know that was just a fleeting hobby of Maggie's. And
as you all know now,
you were just very I found you very interesting. So much so that I was talking about Maggie to all of my friends, even though at that point I was still thinking friendship, maybe. And then over the next few weeks, when I saw you again, I started to get the little maybe. But then I was determined to be single, and just not play the field or any of that, but just to be alone and regroup and work myself.
I had to work hard for that. There was a lot of perseverance of me just hanging in there, going, there's no rush, whatever you're ready, but I'm here for a lot of months.
6 months exactly to the day I asked Maggie to be my girlfriend, and now look what a slippery slope that was.
Yeah,
here we are.
There's a ring on this finger. Yeah.
It was I think it has been 11 years since we met. Yeah, 11 years since we met.
What a wonderful decade.
Thank you for that question, Kirsten. Matthew asks, what are our favourite books and why?
Ooh. Books.
Books, hey.
Oh no, this is where I'm going to reveal how uncultured I actually am. If I think back to favorite books, because I'm wanting to sort of say a book. I don't really read a lot of fiction as much anymore. The only blip or the only thing that made that different was the book club that I was running with your mum. And then with your sister as well, who joined. And that sort of paused now because, again, I'm terrible at staying on top of it. So that's really my fault. So that's when I kind of restarted fiction. I mostly read nonfiction. But if I think back to my favorite books, I would have to say probably things like The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I really, really enjoyed. It was one of those, again, really, we're going way, way back. It was just really magical and beautiful message. I like, it's like I wish I had something really like impressive, like a classic of literature, but I don't really think I do.
Don't look at me. I'm even worse. I do not read because I read a lot for work. I actually really enjoy writing. I think that in another life, I could have maybe been
What?
Well, okay, not being a writer, but you know that as soon as we go on holiday, I do like to start to write. I have a very, interestingly, I'm not very creative in an artsy sense, but I really like constructing words. Like
We went on this one holiday, and then Amy started telling me, talking about this story that she had in her head, and I was like, "That sounds amazing!" And she started writing it, and then literally just you lost it. You don't even know. You can't even remember what it was called, so it's just lost somewhere in your hard drive.
But that's okay. But that's when I was younger. I actually used to write. Like I used to keep a diary, but the diary wasn't always told from my perspective. Like I kind of always had a thing for writing, which is interesting, curious.
Especially for a thinker, not a themer. Like that's a very themery thing.
And my job's very numbers based.
Yeah, and I wish I were more creative when it comes to writing, because I used to write like screenplays and I used to write like plays, but they were also like, I'm not very good with the narrative side of it. Like it's more about events. So this happens, that happens, and then this is the kind of dialogue that happens. I'm not very good at all the descriptive stuff, which is why I feel like I get self-conscious thinking about like RPGs and going, I'm not necessarily all that great on the spot, and maybe.
So neither of us read fiction, really.
Not that much.
Not that much, and certainly not me in a very long time. So sorry, Matthew, that was a terrible answer to you.
Yeah, it's a letdown of an answer. Sorry about that.
But when I did read fiction, it was always like told from, I guess, a single character's perspective, and very much like in the real world, not fantasy, sci-fi, nothing like that. Like I always just enjoyed like people's perception on what's happening around them, and relationships, like the way that people engage with other people. That's the kind of stories I like in general.
Well, and as we're talking, actually, two things come to mind, like pieces of writing that I'm really attracted to for some reason seem to be play. So like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? I really love that. And again, it's very Edward Albee, very dialogue driven, because it's meant to be just on a stage. And I also remember A Streetcar Named Desire, how beautifully written it was, like every single line of it, the construction like it's just the craft of the writing itself was really amazing. But yeah, so plays is what's coming to mind more.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thanks for that question.
Xander asked, if we were an animal in Everdell, what animal would you be and what profession would you have?
Ooh. I've only played Everdell once, so I can't remember the actual animals that were there entirely.
Any woodland creature you could be.
Well, the thing is, if I were to be any woodland creature, I probably wouldn't be a woodland creature. I probably would be a puppy. Like I would be...
You can be a puppy.
Yeah, but I don't think as a puppy I would survive very well in the woods by myself.
What kind of puppy, what kind of dog would you be?
What kind of dog would I be? Well, it would have to be a breed that's, very kind of happy and chirpy and just eager to please. That seems to be me. I've just always been like, I just like people being happy around me. Like that's,
Until you're not fed, and then you're just
hangry. So maybe I'd be Boston. I'd probably be Boston. Although he's not
he's not happy. He's really grumpy.
Yeah, he's just out for himself. Yeah. He's like, what would
your profession be if you're an Everdell dog?
My profession? I would love my profession to be something artistic. So maybe something like pottery or something like, I don't know. I'm not a great painter, but maybe pottery. That's something that I would love to. Like we tried a little bit, and I think if I were a puppy that lived in the woods and I could just dedicate my time to figuring out pottery, maybe that's what I would do. I love the concept of doing something with your hands and locking yourself into your little studio and very introverted. Yeah.
I would probably be a squirrel or a badger or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And I would be the resident matchmaker.
Oh, that's great. That's perfect. Yes.
That would be, I would be
that.
like taking applications from all critters to find the love of your life.
Yeah, you'd have those
Or
signs.
loves.
And like, wanted, are you single? Do you want a match?
Yeah.
Come
Inquire
here.
within in
Come
this
to
tree.
this trunk. Yeah, come to this tree trunk. Yeah. Nice.
Great question. Thanks,
Yes.
Heather. James asks about becoming consumed or obsessed with having to know everything about an upcoming game. So you hear about a game and then you research as much as you can and you go down that rabbit hole and you get a little bit hyper fixated on knowing everything about this game.
Okay.
So have we had that experience, and for what game?
The most recent one
Okay.
would have been Stardew Valley.
Yeah.
As soon as I learned that was a thing that was happening, I'm like, I need this yesterday. I will do anything. I will go anywhere. I will.
And we did. We had to get a friend to send it from
Yes.
the US
So
because it
thank
wasn't
you
available.
so much for that. Yes. Yeah, that's the only one that I've kind of hyper fixated on, and just like I have not been able to, like I wasn't able to stop thinking about it, and I'm like, what's it gonna be like, and I just can't. Yeah.
What type of content did you consume?
About it, I don't think there was that much from memory. There was like obviously the forum
Yeah, it was a
updates on
press
BGG,
release, yeah, it was
and
a
then
bit
in the actual on their official website there was a couple of little snippets, but there wasn't an ongoing from memory at least. Yeah. There wasn't that
In
much.
general, how do you handle like when you get really obsessed with something? And that's something that you tend to do, is you get very fixated on one thing. How do you handle that to make sure it doesn't take over your life?
Well, I think I handled it poorly beforehand, and I think after a few of these obsessions that I'm like, this doesn't actually feel good, because it's like you have that, you're riding that high of like, yes, like I love this, I need to learn everything about this, I need to understand, and then you get to a point where it's almost like it starts feeling toxic. It actually feels a little bit yucky, or like you're not able to concentrate on anything else in your life, and everything is just bringing you back to that thing, and it's like it's no longer joyful. I think that's when I started realizing that sometimes that I needed to kind of take a break from those things, because it was like my entire being was associating with like, this is purpose, my only purpose is this thing, and this is the only thing that has meaning. And so that's when it would start to get a bit too skewed. And so it was just from having the experience of that and reflecting on going, this is no longer feeling good. It felt good at the start, and then that I started to now go, okay, when I kind of catch myself, I guess, now going, I'm going down that path, let me just take a step back and just kind of admire it. And I still enjoy it, and I still, want to do research about it, but it doesn't become my life, I think.
Yeah. And Maggie does that with hobbies generally. I think I do it with products. And so I definitely, the hyperfixation point is around, for me, knowing that I'm getting like, not the best deal necessarily, but getting value for money, or let's say I need to replace like a car or a major appliance in the house. Like I just go down such a rabbit hole. I even when it was harder to find product research, I'd be like trawling forums and whatever else might be, and price research, and making sure that I'm getting a good deal and
good quality. I think for you, it's like you have to make sure that it's like I'm getting something that's going to last, that it's not going to break down on me, that I'm not going to be left with it. Yeah.
But the problem is, I also don't like things that like I like to have the obscure thing.
Yes.
And that's where it starts to turn into a negative kind of fixation for me, is when I go so far down a rabbit hole that I discover the one thing that's now, you can only get it from a certain country, but then it makes everything else pale in comparison in my mind,
and then everything else.
And then I can't be satisfied with just the regular thing that everybody has that is actually
that perfectly does the job.
It's perfectly fine, and it doesn't even matter. So this could be anything. This could be a vacuum cleaner, and I'll just be like, no, I need that one, and that's when it starts to get a bit toxic for me. And I find like sometimes I just have to walk away from that whole situation for a bit, and then come back to it and just, and Maggie will talk some sense into me usually. But I do find myself going down those rabbit holes, and kind of that is where Backchat started from, because it used to be just me, called Kickstarter Diaries, and it came about the fact that I was doing all of this research and trying to find as much information as possible about each game. back before, there's a lot of Kickstarter content now. Back in the day, there was less so. Obviously, Alex has been doing it for so long, and I watched every second of his videos. And then I was in forums and I was trying to find out what was upcoming and, whether things were worthwhile backing or waiting. And so, that kind of comes through in our channel a little bit now. But that is a great question.
Yeah, great question.
Thank you, James. I haven't done it for a game in a little while, only because it feels like I'm just barely keeping up with the games.
I feel the same. It's like I feel like now because we always have this sort of backlog of things that I was like, all the games that we've backed, all the games that have arrived, and then I think it makes it harder. And obviously, this is a very privileged problem to have. It's like it makes it harder.
So many good games.
I know. Yeah, it's like what an issue to
so
have.
Many good games.
It makes it harder for me to obsess about a future thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, there's already so many new things here that I haven't even gotten out of shrink. So,
and I guess because we're reviewers now and content creators, and so we hear about things quite early. And the thing about that is you hear about them and there's no information about it.
Yes.
So you are the information about it sometimes. And so it's a weird place now because even if I wanted to go down that rabbit hole, there is no further information. Like you might have an early rule book or you might have an early draft, but there's not much else to go on.
And often the artwork isn't final and everything's in prototype and things can kind of change. And so it actually makes it harder to get super excited. Like when you see because I was just going to say, like when you see a teaser for a movie or something that you're like, ooh, like I think, and I don't know if it's partly because of what the industry, where we are in terms of the maturity of the industry. By the time that teaser comes, it's never that well fully realized or fully produced. It's like a sentence or it's like a very rough concept, and you know that it's going to change a lot. And so it's hard to be like, because often you get excited for this. The concept is this incredible piece of art that has been fully created and fully fleshed out, and it's just sitting there even though when you see a teaser for a film, the film may not have even been fully filmed yet, but it's you get a little So I think it's probably a little bit harder. I think at the moment the one that I've got in my mind is the Haunted Chocolatier, which is the same. But it's a video game, so that's because it's the same production company as Stardew Valley. So that's and it pretty much looks like Stardew Valley reskinned.
It's exactly like that.
So it's like
Okay, I think we've got time for one more, and then, of course, we'll feature the others in a future episode.
Yes.
But a different James asked, well, James said it's recently been Teacher Appreciation Week in the USA. Thank goodness for all of the teachers out there and the incredible job that they do. Who was one of our favourite teachers and why?
Ooh.
I'll start.
Okay.
Because I have a very top-of-mind person in my mind. So I actually left my high school in year 10 to go to what was essentially part of a university here to do my senior years within the university environment. I wasn't very popular in high school, believe it or not. And so I felt like I needed to get away from that environment and into a more academic environment. And so it was kind of like a university where you could show up if you wanted to show up for classes. And if you didn't, there was all that autonomy, and I really thrived in that environment. But I started out at this senior college wanting to be a pharmacist. So that's what I wanted to be when I grew up. And so I took heavy mathematics, chemistry, biology, and then quickly discovered that was not my thing. I wasn't enjoying it. And then so I ended up swapping into all business and economics. And then I had one spare class that I needed to pick up. And I actually took a class, I think it was called Social Studies. And I was like, oh no, it was kind of just an extra credit thing that I had to do. And this teacher that I met absolutely just changed my way of thinking about the world. She was such a fantastic teacher. Lots of repetition of things, and at the start of every next class, you would do a pop quiz on the class before, which is probably everybody's worst nightmare. But for me, it was cementing in the concepts. And what did she teach about? Well, research method. And so that's what
I didn't know this.
That was my first exposure to market research, which of course is now my career. And I just really enjoyed all the concepts, and then on top of that, she was just a lovely person who just cared so much about her students. So I very much. I still contact her every now and then just to say, hey, you're awesome.
Oh, that's so nice. Well, the teacher that came to mind is he was the literature teacher, Spanish teacher, because obviously I grew up, but it was more just literature, because it wasn't just Spanish literature. It's like, you had like Greek classics and everything in literature. But he was just like the Robin Williams character in Dead Poets Society. Like, he was just so passionate about the craft, and it was so passionate about it's such a, I don't know, it's just everything about him was so much about like trying to instill that love for the written word. This following up from me saying I don't really have a book but
you did a good job.
But I think was the passion that kind of came across of because even as he would read something, like it was like as if he would just get lost in the beauty of what he was reading, and like he would have everyone like would just be so mesmerized. And we also loved that he would do, like when it was towards the end of the day and it's like no one really feels like doing any work, he would do the crossword puzzle with us, but then he'd be like, okay, so these many letters, starts with this, blah blah blah, and then it would kind of give the hint.
Oh, that's fun.
But you could actually get bonus points. So like those points actually would go towards your grades. So you were really invested in this. And
that doesn't seem...
Well, no, because it's like, it's vocabulary. It's vocabulary.
Yeah,
so it sort of kind of all fit. And it's not like you're going to go from fail to pass. Like it was just like, marginal points. But it's like, it was just, he was very passionate about instilling that sense of enjoyment of learning.
I think that's it. A great teacher can make just about any subject exciting and interesting. But it takes a lot of energy, and that's why, passionate teachers are so special. And now that we've both gone into our careers, we've both had experience, like quite a lot of experience teaching in our different industries. And I think that you really appreciate those teachers because you know how much energy goes into bringing in the energy, doing all of the background research, making it,
putting something together,
putting a twist on it to make it interesting, the case study. Anyway, we can go on and on about teaching, but we really should, at 40 minutes, probably get into some games.
Let's do it.
Lucky we've cut back to 3 games because so much chit chat.
Now we're chatting too much.
Your game.
Yes, so I've got this tiny little box called The Spirit of Eden. Now this is from Joseph Farhi, who designs a lot of solo games. Joseph also did The Road, which we love. And this is, again, another solo game where in this one, you're playing as... this one's a bit more abstract in its in the way that it kind of plays out. But you're kind of controlling the three different spirits of the forest. So I believe from memory, it's like water, animals, and like flora and fauna. So flora, fauna, water. And what you're doing is you're kind of pushing back on. There's these 3 monsters that are coming into your land, and they're trying to ravage the land and destroy the land. And so again, like it sounds very thematic, which is cool. But the way that it actually plays out is you have this grid of like a 3x3 of cards. Each card represents a different terrain type, and so you usually have like two of each terrain. What you're trying to do is you're trying to protect those terrains from being ravaged, and then eventually if they're ravaged again, they're fully destroyed. So as soon as the monsters are able to destroy 2 of the same type of terrain, you immediately lose the game. But each of those monsters, the way that it plays out is they've got little meeples. So they're the 3 meeples that represent the 3 different monsters, and you have 3 discs that represent your 3 spirits that you're able to kind of command and move around. Each of those monsters has a deck of goals, and those are the different ways that you can kind of trap and repel them. And so once you manage to achieve each one of those objectives, you're able to completely repel each one of those monsters. The way that it actually then plays out is you actually have you roll dice, and then you have these cards where you place dice according to the number that you got, and that will be the types of actions that you're going to be able to do. So the actions are going to be either moving around, like moving your spirits around, or swapping different pieces around, because the way that the monsters destroy those lands is at the end of that round, after you allocate your dice and you've done all your movements, and wherever they're left, so whatever land card or tile that they're left in, they're going to ravage it. So unless you manage to get one of your spirits over there, and ideally with those gold cards, the gold cards are just going to dictate the way that you're going to capture that monster. So for example, it's going to be a combination of a particular type of terrain. So you kind of you're trying to get those monsters to the particular terrain where they're going to be trapped, and then matching them with a particular spirit type that is going to set that trap. So that's essentially what you're going to be doing. You're rolling dice, and then you're trying to prevent them from destroying it. If you don't manage to have a spirit there, then they're going to ravage the land. If they ravage a land again, that land is destroyed, and that's how you end up losing patches or areas of your board. It's obviously the way it actually plays is very abstract. The puzzle itself, I found it really compelling and really interesting from an abstract point. The first couple of games, because you're like, oh my goodness, it actually feels really tense, because not only are you dependent on the dice roll of what actions you're going to be able to do, but then also with those cards, the cards, you could only allocate one dice to each card, and remember, I think you have 4 cards, and so often you may have the right numbers for the actions, but those actions happen to be in the same card because they're all different, and you go, oh no, and so you're having to sort of rearrange things. And so from that side, there are ways of also scaling the difficulty of the game, which I think is definitely going to be necessary, because after a few games you can kind of figure it out and go, okay, well now I'm gonna have to give them a bit more of an edge to make this challenging. So I think extremely clever design. Again, it's such a cute tiny little box, and look, it just kind of opens like it's like a flip box design, which I think is so clever. It actually, the play real estate, it actually does spread out to, you kind of need a good, it's not a huge table hog, but you do need probably, it's not something that you're going to easily be able to play on like an airplane tray. You need enough space, and obviously you're rolling dice. So
is it
I really
harder
enjoy
or
it.
easier than the road?
I feel like it's very different. I feel like it's on par probably in terms of difficulty, but it's very different in the way that it actually plays out. So, which to me is a sign of obviously a very clever designer. I would still prefer the road, just because I love that kind of post-apocalyptic survival theme. But very impressed with how much, what a clever puzzle has been able to be fit into such a teeny tiny box. So
There's Alone Edition designs are pretty clever. So,
yes, this is what I spent my birthday doing. Like I had put my birthday aside. I'm just going to play all these games, and I ended up just playing this like over and over. and I don't remember this, but Amy was saying how like she would hear me, because Amy was working from home that day, and she would hear me go, no, like
it was very dramatic. Very dramatic.
Obviously, I was so immersed in it that I don't even remember the noises that I was making. But
so this will be staying in the collection.
Absolutely, great. Such a clever puzzle in such a tiny box.
So that is The Spirit of Eden.
Spirit of Eden.
Now, the next game, from a solo game to a cooperative game. What? So if you watch the channel, you will know we very rarely play a cooperative game. But this one was recently on Kickstarter. It's called Paint the Roses, and it is by the designer Ben Goldman. And it is an abstract deductive game, but it does have a Alice in Wonderland theme.
Yes. Yeah.
And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be trying to help each other to discover the patterns in the garden, which is the center board, that are on each of your individual cards.
Whim cards.
Your whim,
the queen's
whim
whims
cards.
of how the queen wants the flowers arranged around the garden.
And you better keep solving these little whim cards because the queen is chasing you around the board. And if the queen catches you, it's off with your head.
Yes.
And so we need to keep one step ahead of the queen.
Or more, ideally.
Ideally more. So the way that this game works is that everybody is going to have a card, and that card is going to have on it a set of two things, either a shape and a shape, or a color and a color, or maybe if you're playing with a hard card, a shape and a color. Now, an easy one is always color to color. And the way that the colors are depicted on the board is via some colored flowers that you can see on the tiles. And all that you're going to be doing on your turn is taking a tray that has 4 different tiles in it.
The greenhouse. That's what the tray is.
The greenhouse. I didn't even realize it was a greenhouse, honestly.
So you're picking and
that's why you're the themer.
It might be a bit blurry otherwise,
Yeah, so you're taking the greenhouse and you're selecting a tile from that greenhouse to add to the garden. Now, in order to win the game, collectively, we need to complete the garden with tiles. As soon as we do that, then we've won the game. And obviously we can't be caught by the queen who's chasing us trying to end the game prematurely. So what you're going to be doing is choosing one of those tiles and placing it out into the garden where there's already an arrangement of tiles that have different suits on them, or the shapes, and different colored flowers. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your cubes and put them on the tile that you just placed and give some information about what you have on your card. So the number of tokens that you're going to be putting down, number of cubes that you're going to be putting down, tells the people around the table how many matches you have with your card with the surrounding or adjacent tiles to the one you just placed, which means that you can sometimes very quickly deduce an easy card because it might be very easy to signal that I have a purple flower and a purple flower. I might place a purple tile and it's next to 2 other purple tiles, which I'll then show 2 cubes, and everyone will be like, well, it's surrounded by 2 matching things. It must be purple. It's hard to explain on a video.
It is hard to explain, yeah.
But what you're essentially trying to do is rule out every possible combination of color and shape, or color and shape to try and work out what people's cards are. Now, it comes with some pieces of paper that are very useful for the medium and hard cards, because as you get more information with each round, you're going to have to be marking off what we think is now not a possible combination. But the trick to this game is, after one person places a tile, everybody gets to use that tile if they want to give more information about the card that they have in their hand. And in any given turn, you can make as many guesses about players' cards around the table as you want to, or as you're willing to gamble, because you might get it down to a 50-50 chance, but if you get it wrong, the queen who's chasing after you is going to get to move at double the speed.
Yeah.
So that could be a very scary thing, because the other part of this game is, as the game progresses, that queen gets faster and faster. Yeah. So we're going to be adding a physical layer to the bottom of the
petal,
queen mini.
Yeah, rose petal underneath.
A rose petal.
Makes her taller and taller.
She gets taller and taller, more terrifying, and she also moves faster and faster. And so when she's already moving 3 spaces and you make a mistake, she's going to be moving 6 spaces and very quickly catch up with you. Now, this game, wow, it is a brain burner.
So hard.
It is so hard. In our first game, I spent probably the first half of the game trying to work out how people were deducing any information. Like, for some reason, I just could not wrap my head around the puzzle of this game. It is hard. This is not, by any means, is not an easy game. Even though there are easy cards in here, at any one time, only one player can have an easy card around the table. And so that means that there's medium and hard cards in the mix. And the harder the card you're willing to take, the more movement points it's going to give you when you get it right. And so there is an incentive to play with harder cards, but it is so difficult.
Hard. Yeah,
and you have to make a guess on each player's turn, which means that you're likely going to get it wrong and that queen is going to come chasing after you, and you need to work things out as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And it's just tough.
I'm so surprised at the layers, because and this is the other thing, as you're playing and you start realizing, even around the table, you start realizing the layers of possible strategy. It's almost like figuring out the strategy is part of the game and part of what, the first few games, you'll spend doing the first few games. Because then there's this aha moment when you're like, oh, wait. So sometimes in that greenhouse, the tiles that you have is like, I'd actually would be putting something that wouldn't tell you anything about my actual win card that I have, because it doesn't actually have any matches to what I'm trying to show. In which case you're like, oh, well then I actually should be using this to help us decipher, or deduce what the other people around the table have. So there's like layers and layers. This is, even though it looks sort of fun and friendly, and I love the artwork in this. I love the artwork. It's got, cool little, minis. This is not a kid-friendly game in terms of
hard.
Yeah, this is hard. Like this is not like a family.
Yeah, or at least in my brain, it's quite hard.
Yeah, but it means that. And again, just having that thing of you can only have one easy card at any given point around the table. We, for the first one, I was like, let's just have everyone have an easy card just so we can figure it out. And very quickly, it's like, this is really hard.
Really hard.
I don't even know, how, we still haven't been able to really win this or beat
we
this.
haven't yet. But we've had a good time playing it. And keep in mind, this is a cooperative game, and we don't usually play cooperative games. So it was kind of, the odds were stacked against this game in terms of our preferences. We don't love deduction games either. We like them, but they're not probably up there in our favorites. This game, I think that if you like a cooperative experience and this kind of abstract puzzle that really forces you to think about the possibilities and what you can rule out, this is a great game. So if you enjoy that style of game, go and check this out.
I am intrigued by it. It is one of those games that it's like,
we will keep playing this until we can crack it, because I feel like it's a good mental workout. So that is Paint the Roses.
All right, final game.
The final game is a game called Animal Kingdoms. Now, this is by Stephen Aramini, who did Sprawlopolis, Circle the Wagon, so some of those really popular button shy games, as well as the most recent Flip Town Kickstarter that we were talking about in Backchat, the most recent Backchat, which reminded me of this game. This is Animal Kingdoms, I think I've said that already, and this was originally taught to me at Dice Tower West by Monique and Naveen. They have a great playthrough video from a couple of years ago. We'll link to that below, so check that out if you want a full playthrough.
How I also learned the game, because I wasn't there at the time where you got taught the game. Where was I? Was I at Katy Perry?
You're probably
I thought I was at a concert.
Yes,
but then I was like, I also want to learn from Monique and Naveen, and so Amy was asleep. I just watched the video. I learned from them as well.
Anyway, so Animal Kingdoms is a really interesting game in which you're going to have beasts, which are cards, different suits of cards that are going to be dealt to you. But what's really interesting about this game is it is really about area majority. But the way that you're going to get those area majorities is by playing cards down into different areas in the board. I think there's 5 of them, isn't it? So there's 5 segments of the board, and each of these segments are going to have a different condition placed on you, so that you can't play a card there unless it meets this condition. So it might be something simple, like the card can only be numbered 1, 2, or 3, or the card can only be these 4 different suits of beasts. That's all that can go here. Or it could be something more interesting, like you have to place in here odd, then even, then odd, then even. Or it might reference the neighboring segments and say, well, it has to be the same number as the most recently played card in either neighboring segment. And what's interesting about this game is that those are constantly changing throughout the rounds of the game. So in the first round, you'll have 5 segments with 5 conditions, and you're each going to be playing cards down one at a time, basically putting one card down where you can. But when you put a card down, you get to take one of your tokens and add it into the area majority game for that segment. And the person who has the most control of that segment at the end of the round is going to be able to take the scoring token and score usually quite a significant number of points. So you're not only thinking, where can I play out of these 5 segments, but also what's the best order to do so in order to get majority in these different areas? Or do I want to hedge my bets and go multiple places, or really focus and ensure that I can take control of this area? Now, there are some additional layers to the game. One is that you're kind of building up in a pyramid shape, in that you have to start from below and work your way up in the area majority game. The last person to place a token basically will secure an ongoing token in that segment for the rest of the game. So the final, if I do that in the first round, then for the final 2 rounds, I'm going to have a permanent presence in that segment, which means that in the second and third round, it's going to be easier to get majority in that segment. So that's the first interesting thing. The second interesting thing is that if I was to take that final spot, it would mean that I am no longer able to be active in that round. So even though it's tempting to take that spot, it also means you can't get any presence anywhere else on the board. And so you really have to time it correctly. And on top of that, if you do decide to go out in this game, so just either you stop playing or you can't play, or you take one of those top spots, you're going to get an early exit point bonus as well. And so timing when you stop playing is a really interesting component of this game. When you move into the next round, those conditions for each of the segments change. So the game changes in quite a significant way, and it's really interesting when those change. And then you do a third round, and then you will tally up the points, and basically you'll be
whereas the
victorious,
most points wins.
As usual, most points wins. But what I really enjoy about the game, and I think what makes it really unique, is first of all playing cards in area majority. That's a really fun combination of things. But the conditions that change, I think that is my favorite part of the game, because there's so many that come in this game that every game is kind of different. Actually, every round in every game feels really different, and I really like that.
It's quite a deck of options. So it does keep it, and they're all fairly straightforward, but it does keep it feeling fresh in terms of like, oh, what's the challenge this time, and what's the challenge this round.
Yeah, and so I played this at Dice Tower West, and I had to get a copy of it. I've still been thinking about it ever since, and so I recently picked this up because it's another great one to have on hand. If it plays up to 5 players, and it's a fairly simple game, very simple game to teach. And it's just really easy to get to the table, and it's hard to find a game that plays 5 players like that. So really, really interesting game. I really enjoy this design.
I really enjoy, and I loved I think the layers, because it's something that it's light and easy to teach, but it's a little bit, it's a little bit crunchy, and there's that element of interaction and sense of like, oh no, you're coming into my area control, and quite a nice little spot that it would fit.
Yes, but I was going to caveat my review and say that I enjoyed it much better at a higher player count. At a 2-player count, like any area majority, it really does suffer from kind of watching multiple players and sussing out the game state and making your best optimal move. It's still interesting at 2 players, but this is a game that I'd get to the table if we've got 4 or 5 players. I think that's where it would really shine, where, you're competing over very few spots, actually. And, the people are playing so many cards that by the time it comes around to you, you might not have a good card anymore.
So different as well.
And so more of the game was in flux, which I really kind of enjoyed when I played it at Dice Tower West. You also played it solo.
I did. It's an interesting solo, because again, so I'll say that this game, I found it engaging, but it's still very abstract. It's not, something that you're like, oh, I'm doing this thematically. It's like, no, you're just playing number cards and suits and according to different things, and then trying to get that area majority. But in the solo, the implementation of it is it's interesting, because obviously you've got your same hand of 4 cards. You always kind of take your turn the regular way that you would. But then the solo has this thing where it sort of reveals a card. And if the card is a rank or the number 1, 2, or 3, it's going to automatically just go wherever you just went. And if it's a 4 through to 8, then it's going to go in like the different regions, because the regions go from 4 spots in this, it's like 4, 5, 6 through to 8. So you know exactly which region it's automatically going to go into, and it doesn't have to meet the conditions that usually would go into that. But it's adding cards, and it is relentless, because then there's also this bonus card that sits next to it, that if for whatever reason the card that you show for your like automa or your AI happens to match in number or beast, then both cards get placed, and so all of a sudden this other opponent is like their area control is just going crazy, and you're like, I don't even feel like I have a moment to breathe here, or like you're kind of trying to get majority somewhere, or you pull out those 1, 2, and 3s, which means that then they're coming for you there as well. So I thought it was a really interesting, fairly easy implementation, but it just made for a very, very challenging solo mode in terms of kind of going, how do I beat this? How do I get you off me? Kind of thing. So I thought it was an interesting one. I think obviously very different experience, because it's more trying to replicate the 2-player experience, which feels very like almost like tug of wars, like you go, I go, you go, I go. Very different to what I imagine. I haven't played it in the higher player counts like you did. What that would feel like, but I think in terms of like spending a good amount of time just having that mental puzzle in there, might as well. Because it's fairly abstract, it's not the one that I would choose to play solo. But yeah, interesting implementation. I was impressed with how like, come on, like how many times I was like, just give me a break. Like, yeah, in a good way.
Yeah. But this will definitely, obviously, be staying in our collection. I really enjoy it. I think it's a great group game, one that's really easy to teach and really satisfying and competitive, which is what we love. So that is Animal Kingdoms. And that is all the games we have for you with our new format of three games.
Three good spotlight.
Good games. Good, solid choices. Thank you so much for watching, as always. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Small Talk. If you have any feedback for us, please drop it in the comments below, or if you have an IAQ, please let us know, and we will answer that in an upcoming episode. We hope you have a wonderful week ahead. Happy Monday. We'll be back with more content soon, but bye for now.
Bye.